Michigan Out of Doors Online is brought to you in part by Tri-County Logging. Experienced in sustainable forestry practices, Tri-County Logging can help you manage your property by keeping your woods healthy and generate income. Serving southern and mid-Michigan for nearly 50 years, TriCountyLogging.com. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Michigan Out of Doors. Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you caught the show last week, you got to see Big Buck Night East over there in Novi at Outdoorama. Well, this week we have Big Buck Night West from Grand Rapids at the Ultimate Sports Show. A lot of big deer, a lot of really good stories as well. You stay tuned. I'm Jimmy Gretzinger. It's time for Michigan Out of Doors.
From the first spring rains to the soft summer breeze, dancing on the pine forest floor, the autumn colors catch your eyes. Here come the crystal winter skies. It's Michigan, Michigan out of doors.
What a beautiful day in the woods.
Someday our children all will see this is their finest legacy, the wonder and the love of Michigan. As the wind comes whispering through the trees, the sweet smell of nature's in the air. From the Great Lakes to the quiet stream, shining like a sportsman's dream, it's a love of Michigan we all share.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by Country Smokehouse, a sportsman's meat processor and Michigan destination since 1988. Offers a variety of homemade smoked meats and Michigan-made products in-store and online. The Country Smokehouse features an outdoor barbecue and bar. Details at countrysmokehouse.com. By Greenmark Equipment. Greenmark Equipment is a John Deere dealership network in southwest Michigan and northern Indiana. Greenmark provides sales and services to farmers, commercial businesses, large property owners, and homeowners. Information about pricing and products available can be found online at greenmarkequipment.com. By Angler Quest Pontoons. Angler Quest is a Michigan-based company building boats designed for comfort and fishing functionality. For more information about the 2022 models, anglerquestpontoons.com. By Polar Craft Boats, offering riveted and welded boats for the outdoor enthusiast. Whether you're targeting fish or waterfowl, Polar Craft Boats have several models to choose from that keep you high and dry. For more information, polarcraft.com.
Well, first off, we want to just welcome everybody to the Ultimate Sports Show here, Big Buck Night. It's been 3 years since we've been here doing this, so it's kind of fun to get back on the horse. And special thanks to all the friends from Showspan that really made this show possible. And our first lucky hunter up here is Rihanna Etz. This was shot with a crossbow, scored 146 3/8 in St. Joe County. It is a beautiful 10-point. Tell us the story. What happened with this deer?
Yeah, so I decided to head out to the farm the only day that week where it was not raining. So I headed out to my stand that's been there for 2 years, never have sat in it. Just had this hunch to sit in it, and the wind was great. I sat there. I had deer around me all night. Had a doe come up underneath my tree. I thought for sure she was going to win me. She never did. Then all the deer disappeared, and he came sneaking up on me. I just had put my phone away. I was checking the time, and between the time I saw him and the time I shot him had been 45 seconds. He was 23 yards away.
Did you have time to get nervous at all? I mean, did you see how big he was?
No, before I went out, I was praying. I said, Jesus, don't let me mess this up.
So you saw him, and kind of walk me through what happened after that.
Well, he came in on my left-hand side, and I'm left-handed, so it was kind of tricky. So I had to turn and shift so I could get a good shot on him. He was 23 yards away, and I let the arrow fly, and it smacked him, and I saw him running away with the arrow in him, and I knew I made a good shot.
And so how far did he go, and what happened once? Kind of walk me through the rest of the evening.
Sure. Yeah, he had to have gone, 25 yards. We waited till dark to go find him. I called my dad as soon as I shot him. I don't even think I was speaking English at that point. I think he thought I fell out of the stand. But yeah, he was 25 yards away. There was no blood, so I was starting to get a little nervous. And then my dad found one drop, and he stayed there. And my brother went this way, and I went another way, and we kind of just circled. And my brother said, Rihanna, you want to see your deer? And I went running through the woods, and I was at a loss for words. There was no ground shrinkage.
All right, our next hunter is Ryan Huggett. Ryan shot this 8-point buck in Van Buren County, 152 inches with your crossbow. So what day was it? What happened out there?
Wednesday, the 27th of October. And I showed up after work, and there's a deer in the field. He looked like a big deer. So I jump in the back of the truck. I pull the crossbow out because it's the first thing I grabbed. And load it and come around the truck, no deer, gone. So I'm like, it's gonna be one of those nights, off wind, hopefully I see something. Got down there, saw a few deer. 5 minutes before legal was over, I heard something coming. I look, and he comes under a bush, and he just picks his head straight up in the air. And I'm pretty sure I said, holy crap, it's him out loud.
How far away was he at that point?
24 yards. And he was quartering hard, and if he took 2 more steps, he'd have had my wind. And so I took the shot, heard a loud whack. I honestly thought I shot him in the leg, and I was nervous. I waited 2 hours to even go look for my arrow. And we went back down there, me and the guy who lets me hunt his land and my other buddy, and we found blood right away. We went 40 yards, and there he was, piled up.
Wow. Now, were you hunting him particularly?
Yeah, I've been watching him for 3 years now. I had him as a 3-year-old. I actually tried to get my wife to shoot him as a 3-year-old, and now I'm glad she didn't, because this is what he turned into. So.
Very cool. What a great story. Congratulations to Ryan. Let's give him a hand.
Okay, Doug Essman is our next hunter. This buck scored 158 and 3/8 shot with a crossbow in Grand Traverse County. 10-point. I think this is the furthest north of a buck that we've got this year, but let's hear the story.
Pretty simple story. I had no history of the deer, no trail camera pictures, nothing. The deer showed up about 5:30, pretty early in the night, 28-yard shot, broadside. It was pretty basic.
What time of the year was it?
November 6th. It was pretty early. The best part about the story of this is somebody had spread mothballs on my food plot at some point in September, and figuring my season was ruined, I hunted anyway, and it worked out. So
are you going to start doing that to all your sets?
I probably shouldn't have said that in here because everybody's trying it now, but
Sure they weren't like sugar cubes or anything?
I just hope whoever did it's watching this tonight. So
Now, this is a big deer for anywhere in the state, but especially Grand Traverse County. Would you bring him back to camp? Did you drive him around, show him off to everybody? What happened?
I was able to get it loaded up in my truck by myself. I called my dad, took it up to his house, showed it to him, went home and just strung it up in the garage, and I sat out in the garage for I think 2 or 3 hours having some beverages and staring at it.
Well, we can all relate to that. Let's give Doug a round of applause for this beautiful Grand Traverse 10-point.
Well, this one actually is a 2020 buck. I was hunting on Thanksgiving, saw a small one, passed him, had a doe permit, and hunted on Saturday after Thanksgiving. Was about 10 o'clock and hadn't really seen anything that morning. And then I saw a doe come into the brush, and it's like, okay, well, I got meat in the freezer because I don't know how many more times I'm going to get out. Well, there was actually 2 of them, and I'm watching them, and then the next thing I know, I catch movement out of the corner of my eye, and I look back and went, "Hope!" Explicative. It's a family-friendly show. Don't want to go there. But I got on him. It was probably easily 1 to 2 minutes, but seemed like forever. All I could see was what you see here. His body was in the brush. It was waiting for him. Next thing I know, I hear movement, and I look down, and the doe was coming underneath my stand. The small one that was behind her was actually another buck. He turned, came down the trail that I walk in on, got about 35 yards out, turned to go to her, and I let that 350 rip, and he went about 20 yards, piled up, and that's the story.
Wow. So is this your biggest buck?
To date, yes.
I like your spirit. That's awesome. Yeah, you got to go bigger now.
You know, I probably have missed a couple that are equal, if not larger, but, this is the one that is on the wall now.
Well, I wasn't even planning on hunting that night. It was a weeknight, November 3rd. My buddy called me that actually owns the property. He doesn't hunt, so he lets me hunt out there. He said that he thought that they were going to cut the corn across the street. So I rushed out there. It was really warm. Didn't even plan on going. Like I said, I got out there maybe an hour and a half before dark. And I got up in the tree, and I realized that they're not cutting the corn. They just parked the combine over there. So I thought maybe it was just going to be a waste of a night. And probably 20 minutes go by, and I see my first deer. So I stand up. I got my knocked and everything ready to go. And there was that was, I think, a spike come rolling through. And then a 4-point, then a 6-point. and then it's super thick right there. So they just kept going back and forth and back and forth, and it was like crazy action. All of a sudden, I hear more coming towards me. This guy comes stepping out, and he's only 15 yards, but I don't have a shot because it's super thick. He turns, starts going away from me to my left.
Could you see this? I mean, it's a really white rat. Could you see it just blaring?
Not really. I mean, I knew it was him, so I got pictures of him. Okay. The first picture I got of him, I think, was October 3rd. So I shot him 1 month after the first picture I got of him. And so he turns, starts going to the left, and he's like, I can just see his butt just facing me, right, just walking away. And I know he's going to go into the thicket, and I'm never going to see him again. So I'm like trying to decide what I'm going to do. He stops, turns to the left and to smell a scrape, and I shot him right through the neck. Wow. That's the only shot I had. So, and my Luminac went out halfway to him, so I thought I actually missed him.
The Luminac fell off?
It just turned off.
Oh, it turned off.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure I hit him. So it wasn't like I was super excited. I just kind of sat down and was like kind of hoping I did, but I wasn't 100%. So I got down and went over there at dark and found my arrow, and there was like no blood on the arrow. And I was just like, my heart just dropped. And I started walking back to my truck. My buddy called me because he was leaving his stand on a different property. And he's like, well, we might as well go look. So he come over. We went out there. I showed him where I found my arrow. We walked like 10 feet, and it was just the craziest blood trail I've ever seen. Really? Yep, and he only went 50 yards.
All right, next up we have Creela Hamlin and her son Clark. They were hunting out there together. This is a 174-inch Allegan County 16-point buck. Lots of character, 16 scoreable points, I guess. It looks like there's a lot more than that on there. You shot it with a 350 Legend. When were you guys out there? With private land?
Yeah, so on our farm, I look out our laundry room window often with doing laundry for 3 boys, and I told my husband, I really think that's going to be the spot this year. So this is a 2020 buck. We got it opening morning. We weren't out there very long. Clark and I were sitting in the blind, and we were talking about fishing. He's my fisherman. I had to remind him we were hunting and not fishing. And so he encouraged me to grunt a couple times on the grunt tube, and it was like watching Michigan Outdoors. He came right at us, and it happened very fast. I was shaking, and I made sure it had enough points to shoot. And beyond that, I just thought it was a big 6-point. I shot it and just had to compose myself afterwards, but we had to look a long time for him in the cornfield before we found him. My husband found him, and he yelled across to me, "Are you sure it was a 6-point?" I was, like I said, more concerned about making a good shot. So it was a big surprise when we found him, for me anyway.
That is amazing. So you had all 3 of your boys out there helping you too with your husband. So you've got to be the hero of the family now.
Yeah, I'm sure one of them will outdo me. This year I got one that was much more my style, little 5-point.
Okay, this is Tommy Harbison. This one scores 175 and 1/8. It's shot with a bow in Van Buren County. Another 12-point, and this has got some real character to it. Did you know this deer was hanging around in there?
Yeah, I've been watching them for 2 years.
For 2 years?
Yeah.
And what, shot it with a bow, so what, in October, November, what was the deal?
It was December 29th. Late season. Yeah, yeah. There was a couple bucks that came out in the open, and they started sparring, and then somehow he heard them, and he decided to come out and gave me an opportunity. Let the air out of him.
Now, did you see him? Was he on any cameras during the season itself, like the early part?
So he disappeared for a little while. I couldn't really pinpoint him on the property, and I got my wife got me a Tacticam trail camera, and I finally figured out where he was on the property and got the squeeze on him, and there he is.
So what was the setup? Were you kind of trying to catch him doing what? Was it morning or evening or?
Anytime. So I was just out there all the time. Okay. So I take like 4 months off a year.
4 months off a year?
Just for hunting, yeah.
What kind of a job do you got?
I own a construction company.
So the key to shooting big bucks.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like it, but.
Well, Tommy, that is a heck of a buck, and 4 months to get him. Let's give him a round of applause from Van Buren County. Monster buck.
Well, there was a lot of other people hunting this buck for years, and I've never seen it on my property before. And there was a Sunday morning I was going to go out, but I decided not to, and I checked my trail camera, and there he was out there. And I hunted a couple times after that, never saw him. And it was a Tuesday night. I went out and didn't hear anything for a while, and next thing you know, I hear something. I look over, and there's corn stalks on both sides just going down. And I'm like, something big is coming. Then after a little bit goes by, it goes silent for a little bit, and I look behind me, and just instantly my heart started pounding after I saw horns.
How far away was he when you were able to see him finally?
He was probably about 10 yards when I first saw him behind me, and then he walked into like 5 yards and stood behind a tree where I couldn't shoot forever, and it was crazy.
Did he know you were there, do you think?
Not right away, but once he got my scent, his ears pinned, he turned, started walking away. I had a real small shot. I had to turn my crossbow sideways, and somehow the Lord worked it out.
That is amazing that you had that kind of composure, especially at your age. I think there's grown men that would have fallen out of the tree trying to do that. So what happens next?
Well, after I shot him, I had no clue where the shot was. And we get down a little later, and I look at the arrow, and there's a lot of blood. And my dad was pretty sure it was dead that night, but with a buck this big, I'm like, we're waiting until morning. And we waited till morning. We walked up to that day, and when I saw it, I stood there in tears. It was, I couldn't believe it.
He finally is working along the outside of the pines, and I still can't tell how big he is.
How far away is he at this point?
He's probably about 35 yards. And so he gets through the not good one, and I thought, well, I'm going to shoot. He's probably a shooter, but I still couldn't tell for sure because I could just see shadows and bits and pieces. So I have a problem with buck fever, about like I'm shaking right now, but so when I decide I'm going to shoot, I can't look at the antlers because I kind of get freaked out, like a lot of hunters. Yep. But he got into that good opening that I was going to shoot at, and I caught his antlers in my scope of my crossbow, and I started following the antlers, and I'm thinking, oh my God, look how big he is. And I thought, shoot, stupid, shoot. He was just about through the shooting lane, so I just got behind his shoulders and I let it fly, let the bolt fly, and I ran up to the edge of the mature woods so I could see where he went, and he circled around probably about 70 yards or whatever, and he stopped and he turned and looked at me, and he just wobbled and dropped. Wow. And I was like, did I just shoot that? It's like, I really didn't know how big he was, so I put another bolt in my crossbow, and I eased up to him real slow, and he was already dead, but I put another arrow in him just because I didn't want him to get up. So that, just to make sure he was planted firmly on the ground, so then I
cocked another one?
No. I don't think I had any more left. No. I knew he was finished then, so I called my wife, and my heart was beating out of my chest, and so her response was, when I called her, I says, I just shot the biggest buck of my life. And she says, yeah, right, if I had $1 for every time I heard that. But her response was like, oh, that's nice. And I says, no, you don't understand. I says, he's dead on the ground in front of me. I said, he's got 1, 2, 3. He's got 4 brow tines on one side. And she started to get excited, and she says, well, how many points is he? And I says, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 points. 10 points on one side. So she's like, oh, man, that is a nice one. So after that, I called some friends, and that's pretty much the story. So.
Well, honestly, I didn't really want to get out of bed that morning, but we decided, no, we're going to go. There was a deer I'd been watching for a few years that the neighbor actually shot, so I was pretty disappointed and had a hard time getting out of bed to go hunting, but we decided to go, and I'm sure glad I did, because out walks this guy that I'd only seen one time on camera before, so.
Wow, so were you sitting in a tree or in a ground blind?
I was actually in a ground blind that day, and he came out pretty close to me, honestly too close. I had a scope on my gun, and it was a little difficult shot, and quartered to me, so kind of a tough shot with my scope, but I finally decided it was either shoot or let him go, so yeah.
So you pulled the trigger. What happens next?
I pulled the trigger, and I was actually, before that, I was busy texting my husband who was hunting just down from me, and a doe had came out, and she was acting really, really strange, and I should have known right away that she's not the usual pattern, that something bigger would be coming, and of course I just let her do her thing, and I was busy texting my husband about that doe, and I look up and I see horns coming through the woods, and I'm like, oh, that's why she's acting that way. But anyway, he came up, and I took the shot at him, and he took off, and I was pretty worried because, well, you know, look at him. So he took off, and my husband texted, and he says, so what was it? And I said, well, I think it was a deer we call Maximus. And he said, no way. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. But he took off. So we ended up going home and eating breakfast and giving him some time, and started to rain. So I got nervous, and we went back and went and found blood. And he went about 140 yards, and there he was.
I've never seen him on trail cam. I was out there November 15th, and I was kind of playing on my phone, caught a glimpse of him, and then I hit my grunt a couple times, or my doe bleat, and then he finally turned, came through the woods about 50 yards, just dropped him. He just kind of stumbled, and I still didn't really know how big he was when I texted my husband.
Really?
Yep. I sent him a picture, and he's just like, I'm like, I think I got a good one. He's like, yeah, with the rack, it was in a hayfield, so it was sticking up. So I sat out there just waiting, you know, seeing if something else came out, and
So you had no idea how big he was?
yeah, and I walked up there and we played a guessing game. I started out with 8 point, and then 10, and to find out, we originally thought it was a 12 because one of them, it's only 3/4, and it has to be an inch to make it, I guess.
So tell me what happened when you guys walked up on this deer.
I really didn't know anything special about it. I just shoot for meat. I don't shoot for the horns.
Do you shoot stuff like this every year?
No, the biggest I shot's been an 8, and that was probably maybe a 120, but.
Wow. Now tell me, what's the significance of this stick in there?
So he actually walked out of the woods with the stick in there, and then I shot him with it. So while he was getting mounted, I kept it up on the other rack until we got him back, and that's exactly how it laid, and it's in the pictures and everything.
Did you get to show him off around town at all?
Well, we went to our buddy's house, and that's when he's like, you should get that measured because that's pretty big.
So we've been watching this buck for 4 years. We nicknamed him Firecracker. And the first picture we got him, he's only a 2.5-year-old, and he's already a 10 point. He's got split brows, so it's like, we know this deer's going to be a giant. And the following year, he ended up probably being about 150. And I was hunting with my girlfriend, and I was like, listen, we got to let this deer go. She's like, you're crazy if I'm letting a 150 go as my second buck ever. And I'm like, all right. Well, it turns out we see him, and she's got a crossbow, and he just skirted just outside of our range. So he ended up getting the pass that year, and the following year he blew up into about a 180, and we're like, yep, he's on the list now. Like, even though he's 4.5, it's like he's going to get it if one of us gets an opportunity. And my grandpa did end up seeing him, but he broke off half his rack just above the brow tine, so he got a pass again. And I found his good side of his shed that year, so I knew he was going to probably blow up again as a 5.5-year-old, and he certainly did. Actually, in 2019 in Illinois, I killed a 232-inch buck. And so my brother, I was like, dude, this is your deer. We got to get this. This is your 200-incher. Let's get it for you. And so I carried a camera around all year filming my brother, and I probably only hunted 3 or 4 times when he didn't want to go. And one of these mornings, we always go up for Thanksgiving to our cabin. And I'm like, hey, or my dad was like, Jeffrey, do you want to stay here and hunt one morning and then go, or do you want to just go and get up to the cabin in time to hunt that night? And he's like, let's stay here one more morning. I'm like, okay, hey, I'll sit with you again and I'll film. And I slept through my alarm, and he comes knocking on my door. He's like, hey, we going to go hunting? I'm like, you know what, you go ahead. I'm going to go this other spot. The wind's good, and, we'll see what happens. And, I mean, right away I start seeing deer, and I see this bush, and it's out in this kind of grass and trees that we planted. And this bush looks just like this deer, just like Firecracker. And I'm like, that dang bush is going to get me again. And then he just does like that. I'm like, oh, crap. So I'm like, okay. So stuff started to get pretty serious. And I seen he was with a doe, so I get my rangefinder out, and I range his doe. She's in my opening. And my rangefinder nothing's popping up. It's completely dead. So I called my dad freaking out because he actually seen this buck during bow season. I'm like, hey, when you seen him, how far was he? He's like, I think probably about 180 yards. I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm in front of me right now. And he's like, oh, he just hung up. So he knew it was business. So I dialed my scope to 180, and he took his time, but he finally made his way over into my shooting lane, and I took the shot. And I filmed the whole thing by myself. So I'm showing my dad after the shot, and he's like, Greg, he is a lot closer than 180. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So we went home, I ate breakfast. My stomach is just, I was like, I don't really want to eat anymore. No, I'm good. But we went out looking for blood, and my brother spotted the first bit of blood, which that made me feel a whole lot better, and I ended up hitting him right where I was aiming. He went only probably 50 yards, and he piled up.
Thank you so much to all the hunters from Big Buck Night East and West that made this year so much fun. Thanks for the great stories, and who knows, maybe we'll see your buck on here next year on Michigan Out of Doors.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by.
Do you dream of somewhere bigger than your backyard? You can get there with Greenstone. Whether you want to hunt, fish, hike, or just watch the sunset, we're ready to help you own your place in the great outdoors. To learn more, visit greenstonefcs.com.
By Alta Equipment Company, providing sales, rentals, service, and parts because uptime matters. From earth moving to landscaping and light construction, Alta offers over 50 brands across 7 Michigan locations to serve you. More information online or 844-GO-2-ALTA. By RBM Jigs, a Michigan-based company serving ice fishing anglers around the state and throughout the country. Specializing in ice fishing gear, RBM Jigs manufactures tungsten jigs, soft plastics, and much more. Online at lakeeffectlures.com.
Closed captioning provided by Marvo Mineral, makers of Lucky Buck, deer management products including minerals to supplement deer diets year-round to improve health and antler growth.
When I wander far away, a dream stays with me night and day. It's the road that leads to my home state. I am a Michigan man. Changing seasons paint the scene like rainbow trout in a hidden stream. The white-tailed deer in the tall pine trees. I am a Michigan man. I am a Michigan man. Ask where I'm from and I'll show you my